Have you ever stopped to really consider the immense logistical footprint of the airports you just sort of rush through on your way to a vacation?
Most people definitely don't.
No, I mean, you know the feeling, right? You're dragging a wheelie bag behind you.
Checking your boarding pass every 2 seconds.
Exactly. You're scanning the departure boards, maybe rushing to grab a quick coffee before your gate closes.
Yeah.
And in those frantic moments, an airport just feels like an obstacle course, just a place to get through.
A hurdle between you and the beach.
Right. But if you pause and really look around, these sweeping transit hubs are actually incredible living ecosystems.
They really are.
So today we are taking a comprehensive look into the Wikipedia article for Lanzarote Airport.
Officially known as César Manrique Lanzarote Airport.
Yes. And our mission for this deep dive is to extract the most fascinating nuggets from the source material. Together, we're going to understand exactly how a tiny, dusty island airstrip evolved into this staggering, multi-million passenger global gateway.
It's quite a journey.
Welcome to this deep dive.
It is a perfect subject for us to explore today, I think. Airports are truly fascinating barometers of human movement, of history, and even geography. They aren't just, functional stretches of asphalt.
Right, they're not just roads for planes.
Exactly. They are reflections of the societies that build them and the eras in which they are constructed. By tracing the history of a single location, like Lanzarote Airport, you can actually watch global shifts in military strategy unfold right there on the tarmac.
Military strategy, technological advancement.
International tourism, all of it.
It's wild. So to really appreciate the sheer scale of what this airport is today, we have to kind of rewind the clock a bit.
Let's do it.
Picture the island of Lanzarote back in the 1930s. It's this beautiful volcanic island in the Canaries, but it is relatively isolated.
Very isolated at that point.
So what was the initial spark that brought an airfield to this specific island?
Well, it was born out of pure logistical necessity. In the 1930s, it became very evident that they needed an aerodrome to connect with the other Canary Islands.
Because getting around by boat was just too slow.
Right, and they needed to connect to the Spanish mainland, too. But more importantly, they desperately needed a reliable refueling point.
Ah, for passing aircraft.
Exactly, for planes navigating that particular stretch of the Atlantic. So the original airfield was built at a place called Llanos de Guasimeta.
Llanos de Guasimeta. I always love looking at the very first landing of any historic airstrip. It's such a cool moment in time.
It really sets the stage.
According to our sources, the date was July 24th, 1941.
Right in the middle of a very turbulent era globally.
Yeah. And the very first aircraft to touch down on that islander was a Junkers Ju-52.
Registration EC Dam.
Yes, EC Dam. A Junkers Ju-52. What does an aircraft from 1941 even look like when it's, touching down on a dirt runway?
If you were standing there in 1941, you would have seen a highly distinctive, rugged machine.
Rugged how?
The Junkers Ju-52 was a German-designed transport aircraft famous for its corrugated metal skin.
Corrugated metal, like a shipping container.
Kind of. It essentially looked like a flying tin can or, a flying shed with 3 engines strapped to it.
Wow.
It was loud, it was incredibly durable, and it was perfectly suited for landing on an unpaved, dusty island airstrip.
So we have this rugged flying tin can landing on a dirt patch for a refueling stop. How does that isolated moment eventually translate into a permanent paved facility?
What's fascinating here is the catalyst that took this from a simple, sporadic refueling strip to a permanent reality.
Because it wasn't just airlines deciding to build it, right?
No, not at all. It wasn't actually driven by a sudden boom in civilian travel or eager tourists wanting a beach vacation.
Nobody was flying to Lanzarote for a tan in the 1940s.
Exactly. It was driven entirely by the military. The Spanish Air Force identified a strategic need for a permanent defense aerodrome.
A defense aerodrome.
Yes, and that specific necessity is what truly established the constructed site in Arrecife. We see this pattern constantly throughout the history of modern infrastructure.
The military gets there first.
Always. Military necessity and defense budgets often lay the heavy, expensive groundwork.
Like the grading of the land.
The grading, the pouring of the initial concrete, the establishment of the secure zones. That military foundation eventually paves the way for civilian commercial use.
So the military lays the groundwork, doing all the really heavy lifting. When do civilians actually get to use it?
Pretty quickly, all things considered.
Does the island just, flip a switch and suddenly tourists are arriving?
Well, it was a remarkably fast transition, actually. By 1946, just 5 years after that first Junker's plane touched down, the airport provisionally started accepting civil traffic.
1946. Okay.
But they couldn't just use the military setup exactly as it was.
Because military bases aren't really built for comfort.
Right. This meant they had to quickly carry out improvements to those existing military facilities.
What kind of improvements?
They extended the runway and provided additional ramp space just to accommodate the early commercial planes.
It sounds like a very utilitarian, bare-bones operation at that point.
Oh, absolutely.
Just a runway and some ramp space.
It was. But when an airport shifts its primary function to civilian passenger travel, the architecture and the passenger experience suddenly start to matter.
People need a place to sit, to check bags.
Right. The island realized that this space needed to be more than just a place to park an airplane. It needed to be a welcoming gateway.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Let's talk about March 3, 1970.
A huge milestone.
Yeah, this seems to be a major turning point in the source material. What exactly happened on this date to change the trajectory of the airport?
That date marks the opening of a brand new passenger terminal and an updated control center.
So a real, proper building.
Yes. It officially kicked off both international and domestic flights in a modern, streamlined way.
No more military hand-me-downs.
Exactly. They were finally moving away from the provisional, retrofitted military structures into a purpose-built era of air travel.
But the centerpiece of this new Guatemala terminal wasn't just a shiny new luggage carousel or a fancy radar system.
No, it was much more thoughtful than that.
It was art. The sources detail a beautiful mural simply titled Lanzarote.
Created specifically for the terminal.
Right, by the highly acclaimed local artist, César Manrique.
Which is such a striking detail because that mural elevates the space from being just a sterile, concrete transit hub into a true reflection of local heritage.
It gives it a soul.
Precisely. César Manrique is an absolute icon of Lanzarote. He is famous for integrating art and architecture seamlessly with the natural volcanic landscape of the island.
The sources say he didn't just want to build structures.
Right, he wanted the structures to feel like they were born from the volcanic rock itself.
By placing his artwork front and center in the terminal, the airport is immediately communicating a sense of place to anyone stepping off a plane.
You aren't just in a generic hallway anywhere in the world.
No, you look at that mural and you are undeniably in Lanzarote.
Exactly that. It tells you exactly where you are. And the depth of that cultural connection was permanently cemented much later in the airport's history.
When they changed the name.
Yes. In 2019, the airport's official name was legally changed to César Manrique Lanzarote Airport.
That's a huge honor.
It is. This renaming was timed perfectly to coincide with the centenary of the artist's birth, cementing his legacy right into the very identity of the island's primary gateway.
It's incredible to think about an airport honoring an artist like that.
It's very rare.
Usually you see airports named after politicians.
JFK, de Gaulle.
Right. Presidents or historical military figures. But the dedication to heritage at this airport doesn't stop with a name change or a mural.
No, it extends to the architecture itself.
What happened to that original passenger terminal, the one used from 1946 all the way to 1970?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you realize how exceptionally rare and intriguing it is for modern infrastructure to museumify its own mid-century past.
Because usually old transit buildings are viewed as obsolete obstacles.
They are quickly demolished, bulldozed over to make way for a new parking garage or an expanded taxiway.
The land is at a premium at an airport.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But Aena, the company that operates the airport, took a completely different approach.
They decided to preserve it.
Yes.
In 2002, they turned that entire original Guatemala passenger terminal into an aviation museum.
They recognized that there was an undeniable interest from both tourists and local people about the island's early aviation heritage.
Which is so cool.
The museum they created there provides a comprehensive, highly detailed insight into the history of flight on the island.
Complete with audio-visual presentations.
Right. It treats the golden age of flight not as something to be paved over, but as a vital part of the island's cultural memory. You can physically walk through the history of how aviation changed the destiny of the island.
Speaking of changing destinies, let's look at the operational side of things as the island grew.
The numbers really start to climb.
The 1970s terminal with its beautiful artwork was charming, but as the decades went on, Lanzarote became wildly popular.
The tourism boom was massive.
How did the airport handle the jump into the modern jet age, particularly in the 1990s?
The growing use of the airport meant they desperately needed to upgrade their facilities to handle staggering leaps in capacity.
And safety, I assume.
Most importantly, safety. To give you a bit of context on what this specific runway looks like,
Let's hear it.
we are talking about a single asphalt strip. It measures exactly 2,400 meters, or 7,874 feet long.
That's a decent length.
It is, but the most dramatic aspect of its geography is its elevation. The entire runway sits a mere 14 meters, about 47 feet, above sea level.
Wait, 47 feet.
This is 47 feet.
So when aircraft are making their final approach, they are practically skimming right over the ocean waves before touching down.
It's a spectacular view for the passengers.
Sure, but that sounds incredibly daunting for a pilot, especially if the weather turns bad or the visibility drops.
It is a highly demanding environment. When you have a single runway handling heavy traffic right on the edge of the sea, where maritime weather can change rapidly, you can't rely solely on a pilot's eyesight.
No, you need instruments.
You need the most robust, precise guidance technology available. That is why the 1990s upgrades were absolutely critical. They installed a whole suite of navigational aids for runway 0321.
The sources mention specific acronyms for these aids: DME, ILS, and VOR facilities.
Alphabet soup.
Total alphabet soup. For those of us who aren't commercial airline pilots, what exactly are these systems doing to keep those planes from landing in the ocean?
Think of them as invisible safety nets made of radio waves.
Okay.
DME stands for Distance Measuring Equipment. It acts like an invisible tape measure, telling the pilot exactly how many miles they are from the touchdown zone.
That makes sense. And VOR?
VOR is essentially a highly advanced radio lighthouse. It keeps the aircraft on the correct horizontal path.
So it points them left or right?
Exactly. And the ILS, or Instrument Landing System, is the most crucial part for poor weather.
How does that work?
It shoots a precise radio beam up into the sky, giving the pilot a virtual glide slope to follow right down to the tarmac, even if they can't see the runway until the last few seconds.
It's like a virtual slide they ride down to the concrete.
That's a great way to picture it.
The 1990s upgrades also included new runway lighting, a modern fire station, and new holding points. I imagine holding points are just areas where aircraft wait safely before entering the active runway.
Right, so you don't have planes colliding on the ground.
Yeah, that seems important.
It is correct.
Yeah.
It is all about orchestrating a highly complex, high-stakes ballet of metal and fuel.
A ballet of metal and fuel, I like that.
And while the technology on the runway was upgraded, the passenger facilities had to match that exponential growth in flights.
So in 1999, an enormous new passenger facility, Terminal 1, was open to the public.
A massive expansion.
And this wasn't just a minor addition to the old building. This new terminal boasted a capacity of 6 million passengers per year.
Which fundamentally changed how the airport operated. With Terminal 1 handling the bulk of the international and heavy domestic traffic, the older terminal was revamped.
It didn't just get shut down.
No, it was relegated to becoming Terminal 2, which today specifically handles the smaller inter-island flights.
So it's a classic hub-and-spoke expansion model.
Precisely.
You separate the wide-body international tourism traffic from the smaller, frequent commuter hops between the neighboring islands.
Exactly. It keeps the flow of people moving efficiently. You don't want passengers taking a 20-minute flight to Gran Canaria getting tangled up with thousands of tourists arriving on a 4-hour flight from London.
That would be a nightmare. Imagine millions of people stepping off planes. You can't just leave them on the tarmac or milling around the baggage claim.
They need to go somewhere.
Right. Moving those people out of the airport and into their vacations is a logistical dance all on its own.
Yeah.
How does the ground transport network actually function to move that volume of humanity?
The ground transport has to be incredibly tight. It functions almost like a conveyor belt system.
Okay.
You have specific bus lines designed for different types of travelers. Some lines, like the 22 and 23, are dedicated to connecting the airport directly to the island's capital, Recife.
So those are mostly serving locals and business travelers.
Exactly.
Meanwhile, the sources show lines like the 161 and 261 acting as the heavy lifters for the tourism sector.
The vacation shuttles.
Yeah, they take arriving vacationers straight down to the major resort areas of Playa Blanca and Puerto del Carmen.
It is a highly streamlined operation designed to move thousands of people an hour from the runway directly to the beach.
Which brings us to the sheer scale of the operation today. The numbers tell a very compelling story about the modern era of travel.
And how heavily this island relies on that single 2,400-meter strip of asphalt.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because the statistics we have from the source material are truly eye-opening. Let's look at the growth trajectory over the past couple of decades.
It's a steep curve. If we look back to 2004, the airport was already handling a very healthy 5.5 million passengers.
5.5 million.
Over the next decade, that number climbed steadily,
Yeah.
reaching a pre-pandemic peak in 2017 of 7.38 million passengers.
That is over 7 million people passing through a single runway on a small island.
A staggering volume.
But like every transit hub on the planet, that relentless upward trajectory hit a sudden, devastating wall in the spring of 2020.
The global shutdown.
Yeah, the passenger numbers plummeted all the way down to just 2.5 million for the entire year.
It was a catastrophic disruption for an island economy built entirely on movement.
Obviously.
2021 saw a slight recovery, inching up to 3.4 million. But the data for 2022 is where we see an absolute explosion in pent-up travel demand.
People wanted to travel again.
Desperately. The airport experienced a 113.7% rebound from the previous year.
113%.
In 2022, they handled over 7.3 million passengers, requiring the airport to manage over 63,000 individual aircraft movements.
Wait, while we are looking at the 2022 statistics, there is another number here regarding cargo.
Yes, the freight data.
It says the airport handled 589 tons of cargo that year.
That's right.
589 tons. For an entire island's airport, that sounds incredibly low.
It does.
How are they supplying the island with food and goods if not by air?
It sounds surprisingly low until you consider the broader logistics of island life. The heavy goods, the construction materials, the bulk food supplies, the vehicles.
The stuff that actually keeps the island running.
All of that comes by sea. It arrives via cargo ships at the maritime ports.
Oh, I see.
That minuscule 589 tons of air freight tells you everything you need to know about the airport's true identity.
Which is?
It is not a supply hub. It is a dedicated, pure-play passenger engine. Its singular defining purpose is importing and exporting vacationers.
It is a pure tourism machine.
Exactly.
And when you look at the 2023 data for the busiest international routes, you can see exactly where that tourism is coming from.
The data paints a very clear picture.
The influence of the UK and Ireland is completely dominant.
The proportions are staggering. The #1 busiest international route is Manchester, bringing in nearly 540,000 passengers alone.
Just from Manchester.
That is followed closely by Dublin and London Gatwick. And the airlines flying these routes tell us a lot about the business model of modern European tourism.
The roster is completely dominated by low-cost carriers.
Yes.
We are talking about sweeping operations by Ryanair, EasyJet, and Jet2. They seem to be the undeniable lifeblood of the international traffic into Lanzarote.
Those low-cost carriers have mastered the point-to-point leisure model.
Point to point.
Yes, they bypass the major continental hubs like Frankfurt or Paris, opting instead to deliver some seekers directly from regional airports in the UK and Ireland straight to the island.
So you don't have to connect in Madrid.
Exactly. It's direct, it's cheap, and it moves millions. But it is also important not to overlook the domestic connectivity, which is incredibly robust.
The domestic routes are just as vital to the ecosystem.
They absolutely are.
The route to neighboring Gran Canaria saw over 807,000 passengers in 2023. Madrid brought in hundreds of thousands, as did Tenerife North.
And those local routes are heavily serviced by airlines like Binter Canarias and Canary Fly.
Right.
Those inter-island airlines essentially act as a local bus service in the sky for the Canary Islands.
A bus service in the sky.
They allow residents to commute, attend medical appointments, or visit family across the archipelago.
That's a great way to look at it.
This blend of massive international tourism and vital domestic transit raises an important question. Or rather, it highlights a fascinating geographical anomaly when we look at the broader context of these statistics.
I noticed this in the data as well, and it completely messes with your standard mental map of the world. Set this up for us.
Let's look at the political reality first. Lanzarote Airport is firmly a Spanish airport.
Definitely.
It is owned and operated by AENA, the Spanish state-owned company. It is culturally European, and it operates under the rules of the European Union.
So for all intents and purposes, it is a European airport.
Politically, yes. Geographically, no.
Here is the twist.
When you look at the source statistics regarding the busiest airports on the African continent, Lanzarote Airport is officially listed as the 8th busiest airport in Africa.
The 8th busiest.
It sits on the list, sandwiched right between Hurghada in Egypt and Jomo Kenyatta International in Kenya.
That is such a wild geographical aha moment.
It really throws you.
Because the Canary Islands are located just off the northwest coast of the African continent, this Spanish-European-style tourism hub is actually one of Africa's busiest aviation centers.
It shows how political borders and geographical realities can overlap in highly unexpected ways.
Yeah.
You have millions of British and Irish tourists flying on low-cost European carriers to a Spanish island.
Right.
And in doing so, they are technically traversing one of the busiest aviation nodes on the African tectonic plate.
It's mind-bending.
Yeah.
So what does this all mean? We started this deep dive looking at a dusty 1930s refueling pit stop.
A very different world.
A little patch of land at Llanos de Guasimeta waiting for a solitary corrugated metal Junkers Ju-52 to land. And we have followed its incredible evolution into a 7.3 million passenger juggernaut.
Incredible transformation.
It is an airport that relies on highly advanced radio tech to safely land planes on a single strip just feet above the ocean waves. It operates as the 8th busiest airport in Africa, despite being Spanish, and somehow it still manages to carve out space to honor a local artist's centenary with a beautiful mural and preserve its mid-century history in a museum.
The ultimate insight here is that airports are not just passive, liminal spaces that we merely pass through on our way to somewhere else.
Right, they are not just waiting rooms.
No. When you actually stop and analyze them, they are intricate physical maps. They map out our global tourism desires, they trace the history of military strategy, and they highlight incredibly quirky geographic anomalies.
Lanzarote Airport perfectly encapsulates the story of modern travel.
It does. It is high volume, highly efficient, heavily reliant on complex technology, and yet deeply tied to the unique geography and culture of the island it serves.
It makes you look at that chaotic terminal in a completely different light, and it leaves me with one final thought for you to mull over the next time you are dragging your suitcase toward the departure gate.
I'm curious.
The original 1946 terminal at Lanzarote was lovingly preserved and turned into an aviation museum simply because of how fascinated people were by early mid-century aviation heritage.
Right.
But look at where we are today. Given the highly efficient, low-cost, carrier-driven, million-strong passenger traffic of today's enormous mega-terminals.
The sheer scale of them.
Exactly. Will future generations ever look back at our current chaotic, modern transit hubs with that exact same nostalgic reverence?
Great question.
Will someone in the year 2100 want to walk through a preserved 2024 baggage claim? It is something to think about the next time you're waiting in line at boarding Group C. Keep exploring.